I'm Lucas. I run this company, Weights and Biases, that's here, and been friends with Josh and Sergey and some of the other folks for a while, and I've been really enjoying all the lectures, and I'm enjoying all the projects folks are working on, and I really appreciate you all coming here weekly. It's fun to see you and fun to see all the stuff you're working on. So I just wanted to make sure you had my contact info. It's lucas@wnb.com. So if you have any questions or you want to talk about any of these topics, I would love to keep the conversation going. I want to talk about machine learning tools and specifically the experiment management product that I built. But I know a lot of you are pretty entrepreneurial, and we've had some amazing entrepreneurs come in. So I kind of want to talk a little bit about how I thought about building this company and how I have seen the space evolve. Because my first company was called Figure 8 that actually started as Crowdflower with Chris over there about 12 years ago that collects training data for machine learning. And I'm really trying to get you guys credits for Figure 8. We actually just got acquired, so it's been a little tricky to navigate the bureaucracy that I built, which is painful for me and kind of breaks my heart. But if any of you want to collect data on Figure 8, I really, really want to help you do it on the platform I made. It would make me so happy. So I have a list of everybody's email address, and I'm begging the team to get you guys accounts and some credits in them. The thing I really can control is we can definitely get you access to Weights and Biases, which is an experiment tracking platform that I built. Has anyone used it yet? Awesome. Thanks, guys. Awesome. And if you need any help at all, especially with that, please talk to me. I would love to help you out there. I wanted to talk about some of my favorite AI applications. Maybe Sergey could grade them if he hasn't. Sergey snuck off. Huh? Man, I was kind of thinking how would I grade these applications? One super cool application is this microwave. It's controversial in this company, but this microwave, Sergey, what do you think? All right, check this out. Where does this land on your scale? So it looks at your food, and then it cooks it perfectly, supposedly. So I watch on everything, yes. Is that on videotape? We'll send it. Oh man, Stacy's against it. Sending Stacy has some meta marks, like environmental impact, which is good. But anyway, if you want to try it, it's in the room in there. I do think this could still be done better. Okay, here. So everybody talks about self-driving cars, but nobody talks about self-driving suitcases, which has this additional benefit. Well, actually, this is not a benefit at all. So this is this problem. I tried to get one, even though you actually probably can't take them. You can't carry these onto a plane, right? But it will follow you onto the plane. Which I guess, Sergey, I think this would get higher marks in the car for if it fails to follow you, right? Yeah. So you could human operator override is probably easier. If it fails to follow you, you get arrested. I also just imagine the training data is people's butts, which just seems kind of amazing. Or recognize you from behind from a suitcase angle. And then this, oh man, this I think it may be vaporware. Breaks my heart if this is vaporware. I ordered this about a year ago and still have not received it. But maybe if one of you want to make this, I would be so. Maybe Stacy might prefer this. Environmental impact, although I question the environmental impact, but it is super cool. So according to their video, it looks at the trash as you put it in and then decides to put it in recycling or not recycling. So maybe cool. This is actually this is one that I made recently that I'm really proud of that only works in my demo video. Also kind of vaporware, but I'll sell you one. So it's one of these, we have one of these, so that's a radiant heater, And so this is actually, space heater is about 10 times as efficient as a radiant heater because the radiant heater beams the heat at you. So sometimes it follows me, and I cut the video precisely to make sure that it only shows the part where it follows me. What's that? Does that feel creepy? No, it doesn't feel creepy at all. It feels wonderful because it's warming you, like the sun. It's amazing. I mean, it might feel different to you, but it's face recognition for my benefit feels amazing. For my warmth, I don't know. Anyway, I've been really enjoying your projects. I'm really excited to to see them. I think one of the things that's really cool right now is there's so many more possible applications than people to make applications that kind of know how to use this technology. That I think this is like the best way to democratize AI is for you all to go out and make really cool stuff. We'd love to support that. So I want to go through like some of the challenges that I see, because I've been watching the space for like 10, 12 years and just seeing the same challenges, and they don't seem to go away, right? And people really work hard to overcome them. I think one big issue from like a bureaucratic perspective is that as doing machine learning, you look a lot like engineers, but in fact, a lot of things are different, right? So the code is like incomprehensible. It doesn't version well. It's like much bigger than sort of something you might check into GitHub. And actually, your whole workflow is different. And I think everybody's had a different take on it. Sergey had a slide on this. Almost everybody that has come in and spoke, I think unprompted, has actually had some variation of this, right? Where there's clearly like sort of a data piece in the beginning, right? Like a model building piece, and then a deployment piece, right? And I think you're kind of underserved by the different classes that we have, as awesome as there's so much good online material about sort of the learning algorithm piece, right? And there's just so much less material. And I think the promise of this applied deep learning class is to sort of help you with the end-to-end process, right? Because if you can't get good data, you can't do machine learning right. And if you can't deploy it and monitor it, it's like that's just a toy, right? It's not like a useful thing. So this workflow, I think, is like fundamentally different. And what this means is that there's like a whole new set of tools needed. And the tools, I kind of group them around the challenges that we face, right? And so, the first one is machine learning requires training data. And this is something I noticed, many, many years ago. Like my first job is just like collecting training data. Actually, Peter Norvig, this is like one of the best papers ever on machine learning, I think, is the unreasonable effectiveness of data. And it's actually aged like beautifully. Unlike some papers which you'd say, 15 years later, not relevant. I think this is like even more relevant, where basically Peter Norvig points out that you basically the applications that work are applications where there's a lot of training data available. He points out at the time, this was 15 years ago, I think that's still really true. He also has been like posting on Facebook how ML tools companies are stupid, which I just totally don't understand and disagree with. But he's a smart guy. So you get these effects, right? This is what me and Chris were looking at like 12 years ago when we started a company, right? Which is that like better algorithms get incremental improvements. Better features are better sort of like data engineering before you feed into the model. Gets more improvement, but it's like really difficult to put a process around. But then more data often just gets you huge improvements, right? And actually cleaner data, even less studied, can really get you big improvements. And I think you'll feel, anyone that's like worked on machine learning is like nodding their head, right? But it's like, this is actually a surprise, I think, to everyone when they first go through it. Because there's not, as far as I know, a class at at Stanford on collecting data well. And really, like, if we were optimizing for high quality deployed models, they're like half the classes would be on collecting data well. Because the other thing that you really can't do is kind of toss it over the fence to someone else to collect the data for you. I think Andrej Karpathy like put this best. So he's the person running machine learning at Tesla, trying to make the autopilot work well. And he's saying that he spends most of his time on collecting data sets. I actually saw him the other day, and he was basically saying I now spend all my time on data set collection. Right? I'm not doing any modeling, basically. Like there's other folks doing it now. So I think that this is like this is I think the Andrej Karpathy's allocation is actually a pretty good allocation in most cases, trying to make models work well. And it's been really interesting actually to see when I started Crowdflower, reading and figure that we had basically no competitors, or none of our competitors really thought of themselves as like competitors to us. They didn't think of themselves as training data collection companies. Now there's actually a whole bunch of competitors with really interesting takes, but you should use figure 8 in this class for your projects. Another thing is difficulty is like super hard to predict, right? And I think that this is like something that also everyone's talked about. It's been really interesting to see. So I think Josh had some really smart stuff to say on this, kind of how to predict difficulty. But I think everyone that's talked to you in different ways has kind of looked into this. And I always point to Kaggle competitions because it's like data, right? But I did a competition on data that I knew, and in the first 3 days you get this improvement going like 35% to 50%. It like feels really good. and then like totally flattened out, over the next month or two, right? And I was thinking, like, okay, if I was managing a team, or even if I was doing this project, it would be super frustrating, right? Because you get like all this momentum right at the beginning, and then it completely flattens out, and the effort was actually skyrocketing. Because anybody ever do a Kaggle competition? Maybe, yeah. Yeah, so it's like, towards the end, people get excited because they're like, okay, we're gonna get that prize, and so more and more people were competing and doing really smart things over less and less value, right? Which is like interesting. And then you look at like these, self-driving cars, and I think people just can't help themselves but look at a graph like this of miles per disengage and make crazy statements, right? Where, I guess Josh had the same slide, but I just think the slide needs to be like pounded on, right? I mean, this is just, this is 2015, right? This is, this is happening, right? But it's just such human nature, right? Even people have like seen this stuff over and over to get confused by this. And then, people talk about machine learning, is like unpredictable and opaque. And I've had like a lot of different examples of this, but I had a personal example recently that really brought this home to me, where I read on Medium like posts about machine learning, and I read a lot of posts about machine learning, and like this is like typical content I write as recommended. And then I got this recommendation from Medium, just short dudes need love too, and it's just like, man, like how did it come up with that? Like, of course I clicked on it, so I fed the beast, but it's just like, I really wanted explainable AI like so badly in this moment, and I still want it. Another thing is that it can feel like super non-deterministic, right? And I think that this is another thing that people working on it really feel, where code feels very deterministic generally, right? You can just rerun the same code twice, and you get the same results. But then, people have talked about this machine learning reproducibility crisis, and it's like such an issue, right? Like you get code off GitHub, and you can run it. If you get like machine learning code, it's going to take you a long time to even reproduce one thing that the person did. But to do all these different things will take so much time. And that's why we really got excited about building weights and biases. When we were thinking about like even going back for ourselves like 1 week or 1 month earlier and trying to figure out what we did was like incredibly painful, right? And my friend actually was showing me his notes of the different models that he ran. And he actually had this Google document that was like thousands of pages of this, right? Where it was like, this is the first thing he tried, and this is the second thing he tried. And I mean, this is like so far from reproducible. I just, it like blows my mind that he was thinking he could like go back to this and like rerun something. So I think what you get from this, and I think like what's really exciting to me is new workflows and new tools. And obviously, I'm like incredibly biased, right? But I'm also looking at other tools, and I think it's important for you to know what the good tooling out there is, right? So one place that I think you really should be practicing in the space is Siobhan's machine intelligence slide. So I think it's just interesting to look at her first one, which I think was very good and a really nice framing of the industry. And then her second one is kind of getting like a little more crowded, and then her third one is like getting intense. But you can her website siobhanzillis.com is actually just an amazing place to sort of see the entire kind of a third-party take on the taxonomy of tools and then applications of those tools. And I even think the diff of like her kind of 2.0 versus 3.0 is a good place to see kind of where momentum's happening and kind of where interesting applications are taking off and where interesting kind of back-end tools are evolving. There's actually another, I think, just if you're interested in tools at all, there's a really, really smart VC out of Redpoint that I have no affiliation with. I just think she's actually writing really excellent stuff right now, where she kind of has her own, this is a little bit more of like an investor landscape, but I think for those of you that are really thinking from an investment perspective, or if you're thinking of pitching VCs on an AI thing in any way, I would read her her stuff because it's really good. But these are sort of I think these folks are like kind of trying to give you like a complete picture of like everything out there. I think what I want to do kind of briefly is zoom out a little bit and just sort of give you my kind of quick taxonomy, which is actually very similar, I think, to the stuff that Sergey was saying. So one is that clearly like there's a point solution versus end-to-end dichotomy, and I myself, and I think a lot of people with a little bit more of a hacker mentality, I think, tend to prefer point solutions. So it's really important to me that Weights and Biases builds point solutions, because that's what I would want. But I do think people in more regulated industries tend to seem to prefer more end-to-end platforms. Like, does anybody use Domino Data? Any of you? Yeah? How did you feel about Domino Data? Let's crowdsource this.
I used it very briefly. I know some people there.
Uh-huh.
One of the concerns that I would have had was not just like, if I were going to do a project working by myself, maybe it would work.
Yep.
But it would be really hard. Like, there's no incremental adoption option. So if I was working with a team that had a bunch of like tools that they were already using, it would be really hard to convince everyone to drop all of those things to convert over.
Right. Yeah, I think that's the trade-off, right? So I think that I actually really admire Domino Data. I think the issue, though, is you really, really have to get everyone to commit, and that feels really hard to do. I think like even like FB Learner, which is like Facebook's tool, which is kind of well known for having like broad adoption inside Facebook. It's kind of unique in that it's like a company where people are really committed to it. And actually, we were over there and it seemed like they were still kind of like rounding up people to get them to use it. So the problem with these tools is that when you don't have complete adoption, it can be really difficult to use them. Actually, at Figure 8, we used Kubeflow, and it kind of had that same issue, right? Where it was just like, if you don't completely buy into it, it can be tough. So I would not necessarily, my take would be for your like kind of projects, I would not start with an end-to-end tool unless you really want to learn about it, because they're all really designed for companies where you get complete buy-in for the tool, and that's where you get the real benefits. So I think point solutions are going to be better for you. I think Paperspace is a useful thing. SIGOpt is the hyperparameter optimization tool. Pachyderm is a data set versioning tool. So I think picking and choosing tools makes a ton of sense, and I always am curious about the stack that people are actually using, because I think the space is so fluid right now that it has not converged around. It hasn't even converged around frameworks, right? So I would love to hear what you use and what you think is useful. We actually, at Figure 8, we put out a survey of what people are using every year. And so if you go to that website, you can actually kind of just see sort of a ranking of Figure 8's customers, essentially like machine learning practitioners, and what kind of what has general adoption. I think like what I try to think about for my tools, I think is kind of less in sort of the infrastructure and frameworks realm and more in the dev tools. I think Figure 8 was kind of a training data thing. I think Weights and Biases tries to be in the sort of more learning algorithm evaluation. Basically, it's an experiment tracking thing, and so that's I think where I like to live. I think the infrastructure stuff is really cool and actually much more evolved and settled. So I think SageMaker is a great. Anybody use SageMaker? How do you feel about SageMaker? Uh-huh. What's that?
It was
easy to set up.
There are a lot of documentation.
Cool. Nice. Yeah. I think SageMaker, I would say, of all the, I mean, they don't pay me, but I think SageMaker is just it's probably the one kind of ML infrastructure thing that we probably see the most, just generally going into companies right now. But of course, that can change quickly. And then you see these frameworks like, clearly TensorFlow, PyTorch, and Keras are kind of the top, most common frameworks that we encounter. So I thought the most fun thing to do, really, since I think Sergey gave such a comprehensive overview of all the different tools, would be I just kind of want to show you the tools that we built and what they do, and actually play a little bit with this stuff quickly. So if you would open up your laptop and go to app.wnb.ai/settings, that would be fantastic. And you can maybe even do it on your iPad. Maybe. And I got this friend, this co-founder, Chris, right over there. And he loves giving tech support. It's like his favorite thing to do. So if you have any problems at all, like you think you might have typed in the URL wrong, just raise your hand. And Chris has got you.
You need like antivirus software. If you don't have an account, you just have to sign up with your GitHub or Google, or you can create an account. But then this, if you put this code in at that URL, once you do have an account, then that gives you, keep that code up.
Oh yeah, I gotta keep the code up.
Simpson's stochastic base. Every day we choose a different code that is a combination of a machine learning word and a musical instrument. The Simpsons part tells us to check out this really sick machine learning repo that we set up for you with a very basic multi-layer perceptron to classify images of Simpsons characters. And we're going to have a brief competition to see who can make the best model fastest.
We're gonna do hyperparameter search by crowdsourcing. All right, so here's the code that you run, Python space train.py. We'll run this little Keras classifier. So do you see that? So if you go to File and then New and then Terminal, you get a terminal. And this will. So this is starting to train this is starting to train Chris's little Simpsons character face recognition classifier. So the code that ran is here. And so the first piece is that there's a couple hyperparameters that we set that you may want to modify. And then there's downloading, and then we make these Keras image data generators to generate examples of Simpsons characters for both the training and test data. And then right here is the Keras model. So if you used Keras before and you want to play with this model, you could make it like a convolutional model or something more complicated. If you haven't done a lot of playing with Keras, you can actually change these hyperparameters here. But the goal, I guess, is that to make a better model. All right, so guys, I do want to make sure that you all get to keep moving your projects forward. So I think we should probably pause this. Although if you want to keep working on it, maybe we'll pull this up in the next class and. Yeah, we'll keep it open. I mean, I don't know. What should we next class? Want to? I mean, I would prefer that you worked on your cool projects, but I would also prefer that someone. Someone did knock Tom off. Christina, who are you? Christina. What did you? Hey. Well done. Well done. I guess you teach the next class. Do you want to say anything about what your approach was, or?
I just added a combination that added some layers to that, and then it's just forever.
Interesting. So just one thing just to point out is you actually can go, you can go into here and get a sense of what happened with this model.
How do you get that? Where is that?
So if you click on the if you click on this thing on the left here, you can kind of dig into what any particular person is doing in their run. But we'll keep this, I mean, just for fun, we'll keep this running for a while. And if you want to keep, yeah.
How do you get to that script?
So in when you do this run in the terminal, it's going to tell you that it's synced to this URL here.
It'll be the first
Can you
line
make
in the
URLs
output,
clickable in the console?
or the last line once it finishes. But you can also just go to app.wb.ai, and you'll see everyone's.
But anyway, you can also use this tool for your personal projects, and that was super fun. Thank you.